The casket looked smaller than it should have. That was the first clear thought I had as the pulley system groaned and lowered Ethan into the ground. The winter sun caught on the brass handles too bright, too polished for what was happening. My fingers trembled inside my gloves, and I tried pressing them flat against my black dress, then clasping them together. But nothing steadied me. There was no one beside me to lean on. No Jaden, not even a flower from him to lay at his father's grave. A vibration in my coat pocket cut through the minister's voice. Reflexively, I pulled out my phone, hoping absurdly that it was Jaden, at least calling. Instead, the message glared back at me in neat blue bubbles. We need $500K from Dad's trust. It's for Mariana's mom's birthday. No greeting, no apology. Signed off casually like a grocery list. The earth shifted under my feet. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and pressed my lips together so hard they hurt. Around me, only the low murmur of the cemetery workers, the crunch of their boots on frozen ground, the mechanical whir of the casket being lowered. I kept my eyes on the coffin. Ethan had always been the steady one, the one who believed we could shape Jaden into someone better than ourselves. Now it was just me and the silence where my family should have been. I felt my knees weaken, but forced myself upright, shoulders squared. A neighbor, Angela, stood a few yards away, hat pulled low, clutching a paper cup of coffee. She had come without being asked, the only one. She gave me a small nod of encouragement, but didn't move closer. I was grateful for that, grateful for her quiet respect. I reached into my handbag and pulled out a single rose. Ethan had planted it for our 25th anniversary, and this morning I had cut the last bloom. I laid it gently on the casket as it sank. In the distance, a cold wind rose, carrying away the words I couldn't yet say. I knew this was only the beginning. Back home, the smell of damp earth from the cemetery still clung to my coat. I hung it on the peg by the door and stared at the empty hallway. Ethan's boots used to sit there, always polished, lined up with mine. Now, it was just my pair, scuffed at the toes, leather cracked from years of wear. I kicked them off and walked barefoot across the cool kitchen tile, the silence settling around me like a second skin. I filled the kettle and let the water run while my mind drifted. How many times had I chosen the cheaper option, the smaller portion, the slower road, so Jaden could have more? I saw us clearly. Ethan and I at the old oak table poring over budgets while Jaden slept upstairs. Vacations crossed out home, repairs delayed Ethan's shoulders, slumping as he sighed. "You're the CFO of our sacrifices," he would say, trying to make me smile. I always did smile back, even when my stomach knotted from the arithmetic of never enough. I remembered the sneakers lined up in Jaden's room, bright colors each semester, while my own heels wore thin. Science camps, robotics kits, summer trips he bragged about. At school, he got all of it. We told ourselves it was worth it. We were investing in a future where our son would remember what we'd done and honor it. Now my phone sat silent on the counter, the screen dark but heavy with that last message. We need $500K, not I'm sorry. Not even Mom. Just a demand dressed up as a duty. My eyes drifted to the photo on the fridge, Jaden and Mariana, arms around Dolores, at some gala, all three of them, laughing at something I wasn't part of. I poured the hot water over coffee grounds and let the steam rise against my face. Ethan's joke echoed in my head, but this time there was no humor in it. CFOs don't get thank yous. They just keep the books until someone else signs the checks. I wrapped my hands around the mug and stared out the window, already knowing what I needed to do next. The file cabinet in Ethan's office hadn't been opened since he got sick. I hesitated a moment before sliding the drawer open, the old metal, groaning like it too had been waiting. Everything was still organized the way he liked, yellow tabs labeled in his careful block print. Legal and legacy. That's what he'd written on the last folder. I pulled it out with both hands and carried it to the kitchen table. Inside were the documents I expected, the trust papers, notarized copies, and a list of account contacts. All of it structured so I wouldn't have to scramble in grief, but tucked into the back was something I hadn't seen before. A plain envelope with my name written in Ethan's quick but unmistakable script. No stamp. Just folded and placed exactly where he wanted me to find it. I opened it slowly. The letter inside was short. If you ever feel unsure, follow your instinct. You'll know when to protect what we built. Not everyone understands legacy the way we did. I read it once. Then again, Ethan didn't name Jaden, but I knew who he meant. He hadn't distrusted our son's love, but he had worried about his choices, his compass. I remembered the conversations we had near the end, when Jaden didn't show up for that hospital visit, when Ethan caught Mariana pressuring Jaden to make arrangements now, while it's easier. He knew. I stared at the trust document again. Ethan had made sure it stayed in my name until my passing. Jaden would inherit only after I was gone, if I allowed it. And now I understood why. It wasn't about control. It was about clarity. About ensuring that what we built wouldn't be handed to someone who saw it as convenient cash. The coffee in my mug had gone cold, untouched. I picked it up, dumped it in the sink, and started a fresh pot. Then I opened my laptop and searched for Ethan's attorney. I knew the number was in there somewhere. I would call him in the morning. But first, I needed to see what else had been taken without asking. I heard the knock just before 10. I wasn't expecting anyone, but Angela always let me know when something felt off. She stood on my porch, bundled in her red fleece jacket, holding her phone like it had betrayed her. "I thought you should see this before you hear it from someone else," she said. The video played before I could decide whether I wanted it to. Music blasted some trendy remix of an old song Ethan would have hated. On the screen, a rooftop party lit with gold lanterns, champagne flowing. And there, center frame, was Dolores. She twirled in a glittering silver dress, holding up a wine glass like it was a trophy. The caption scrolled across the bottom. "Birthday Queen says, 'We deserve luxury, not guilt.'" The crowd cheered. Phones flashed, but my eyes locked on the handbag tucked under her arm, white leather gold clasp. I had bought it for Mariana's promotion last year. She said she'd never own anything that nice if not for me. I remember how tightly she hugged me then. Now it hung on her mother's shoulder, like it had always belonged there. Angela hovered quietly behind me. "It's making the rounds. Someone tagged the caterer and it took off." I nodded, but my chest felt hollow. The camera panned, the table zoomed on the glassware. I knew those too, my wedding crystal. A set Ethan and I had saved for one piece at a time. We only used them for anniversaries or when Jaden came home from college. Now they clinked against manicured nails and false praise. I handed Angela back the phone. "Thank you for showing me." She didn't ask questions. Just touched my arm gently before heading back down the steps. I went inside, straight to the cabinet where the crystal had once lived. Empty shelves. I hadn't even noticed they were gone. Not until now. The next morning, I was sorting through yesterday's mail when the doorbell rang. A man in a gray uniform stood on the porch, holding a slim overnight envelope. He checked my name twice before handing it over. No smile, no small talk, just a signature on his tablet. And he was gone. I brought it to the kitchen table, sliding a butter knife under the flap. A stack of crisp papers slipped out. At the top, my bank's logo. Below it, a transfer authorization already filled out in neat black ink. Jaden's signature scrawled across the bottom, and in the space marked recipient Dolores's full name, underlined as if to emphasize inevitability. No letter, no call, not even a sticky note. Just a deadline circled in red on the last page. Sign and return by Friday. I stared at the numbers. $500,000. The trust Ethan had left to secure a future for a child who no longer existed. They hadn't even bothered to ask how I was holding up. They had simply assumed. I pushed the papers back into the envelope and sat very still. My coffee steamed beside me, but I didn't touch it. Somewhere between Ethan's funeral and this moment, something in me had gone quiet. Not numb, but sharp. I stood, walked to the shredder Ethan had bought back when identity theft worried him more than family betrayal, and fed the first page through. The sound was low and steady paper turning to strips. One by one I slid the rest in until only the envelope remained. Then I carried it to the trash, washed my hands, and opened my laptop. My fingers didn't tremble as I logged into the bank and changed every password. Security questions, PINs, backup codes, reset, rewritten, locked. When I was done, I closed the laptop and sat back. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. I glanced at the locked drawer in Ethan's study, the one he had always said was for emergencies. I realized it was time to find the key. By Monday morning, I'd found the key to Ethan's locked drawer, and inside it, Harold Lynn's card. The same lawyer Ethan had trusted for decades. I called before I lost my nerve. His assistant recognized my name immediately and offered an appointment that afternoon. Harold's office smelled faintly of polished wood and old books. He rose when I entered, his silver hair catching the light from the window. "I'm so sorry about Ethan," he said quietly. "He spoke of you often." I nodded, too tired for polite replies, and placed the envelope of trust documents on his desk. "I need to know who's been asking about this," I said. He adjusted his glasses and opened a folder already waiting. "I suspected you might. We've logged several calls over the past month, people pretending to be you. They asked for wire instructions, beneficiary updates, even requested replacement signature cards." He turned the folder so I could see. Phone numbers, email addresses, timestamps. 2 numbers jumped out immediately: Jaden's cell and the landline at Mariana's apartment. Harold flipped another page: IP traces, digital logs. We also received 3 calls from a woman named Dolores Reyes. She used the phrase, "expedite inheritance." My stomach tightened, but I kept my face still. Harold continued. "And this?" He tapped a printed email chain. "Drafts of affidavits questioning your capacity to manage funds supposedly prepared for a court petition." He pressed a button on his desk phone. Recordings filled the room. Jaden's voice lower than I remembered, asking how to get around delays. Dolores chiming in about timing before the estate is locked. I listened until the end, then set my hands flat on the desk. My voice came out even. "Can I rewrite the beneficiary list?" Harold leaned back, studying me. "Yes," he said slowly, "but it's a serious step." I met his eyes. "So is pretending your mother's unfit while she's still alive." He closed the folder gently. "Then let's begin." I reached for the pen he offered, feeling the first flicker of resolve return as I signed the authorization to start the process. I drove north that Friday, the sun rising behind me as the road curved through pine and early frost. Ethan's sister Claudia hadn't changed much. Her hair was more silver now, her hands slower to move, but her voice still carried that quiet certainty Ethan used to admire. She hugged me for a long time on the porch, then handed me a mug of coffee so strong it nearly brought tears to my eyes. We sat in the rocking chairs Ethan helped her sand and repaint 10 summers ago. The breeze off the lake was sharp but clean. "I figured you might come," she said after a while, watching a pair of birds skitter across the feeder. I told her everything, no drama, no embellishment. Just the truth in a steady voice, the trust papers, the forged calls, Dolores's voice on the recordings. Claudia didn't interrupt. She just sipped, nodded, and let it all land. When I was finished, she set her mug down and said, "Ethan told me once, Jaden's weakness isn't cruelty. It's convenience." He loves the easy path, the one where someone else bleeds for his comfort. The words didn't sting. They settled like a balm, honest and clean. We spent the rest of the day walking the edge of the property, clearing branches, talking about the time Ethan broke his ankle trying to build her a dock. I laughed more than I expected to. Claudia pulled out old family albums, and we found one of Jaden at age 6, grinning from a treehouse Ethan built with him in the backyard. I stared at that photo for a long time. That night after dinner, I sat at her dining table and began sketching out my new estate plan. Not vindictive, not spiteful, just clear. I wrote down names, people who had shown up not just in blood, but in spirit. Nurses from Ethan's final weeks, a teacher who'd sent me a thank you note for a scholarship check, and Claudia. I slept that night with the windows cracked open and the paperwork beside me, knowing tomorrow I'd finalize what needed to be done. The hospice center sat just off Route 6, nestled behind an old church Ethan used to drive past on his way home from the hardware store. I remembered when he first signed up to volunteer there. He never talked much about it, but his shoulders always looked lighter on the days he went. When I met with the director, a woman named Callie, who still remembered Ethan's handwriting from the patient notes he used to leave behind, I handed her the check without fanfare. $100,000 drawn from the trust. She blinked at the number, then at me. He believed in this place, I said. So I'm making sure it believes in others, too. Next came the Vance Legacy Fund. I opened the account under my name, but made sure the mission was public housing grants for single parents finishing school or starting over. The kind of people who knew what it felt like to carry everything alone. I didn't announce it. I didn't need applause. The announcement came in the form of envelopes sent to 10 people, each one selected through Ethan's old volunteer logs. Quiet families, women rebuilding after loss, men raising children while working nights. They'd find relief soon, even if they never knew my name. Then I wrote one more letter. It was short, addressed to Jaden and typed on my old IBM Selectric, the same machine I'd used for every grant application Ethan and I submitted over the years. This trust was meant for a child, not for adults who forgot how to honor one. I enclosed a photograph. Jaden and Ethan side by side at age 7, covered in mud from that first camping trip. I sealed the envelope and placed it gently in the mailbox. Then I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee, opened my ledger, and wrote the next disbursement, a grant to a single mother in New Haven who'd just been accepted to nursing school. Her daughter's name was Hope. The photos hit the newsfeed before noon. Dolores standing center stage, draped in velvet champagne flute, in hand surrounded by ice sculptures and imported orchids. A banner behind her read, "Another Year of Grace." The venue was tagged. The press was tagged. Even the cake had its own account. But this time, the story didn't stop with photos. That evening, I got a call from Claudia. "Check the Chronicle," she said, then paused. "And don't be surprised." An anonymous source had leaked documents to the press, affidavits, call logs, audio transcripts. Everything Harold had shown me in quiet privacy was now public record. Headlines ran beneath Dolores's smiling face: "Inheritance Scandal Taints Charity Gala." Within hours, 2 corporate sponsors issued statements distancing themselves from the event. One luxury brand pulled its logo from the press wall entirely. The comments turned. First confusion, then outrage. By morning, Mariana's social media accounts had vanished. Every post, every tagged event scrubbed clean, as if erasure could undo what had been done. Jaden tried to call me just after noon. The screen lit up with his name, the same one I'd taught him to write in block letters when he was 4. I didn't answer. I watched it buzz 3 times before flipping the phone face down on the table. The silence that followed was the cleanest breath I'd taken in weeks. I poured another cup of coffee, strong and dark, and sat by the window. Across the street, The neighbors' wind chimes tinkled softly in the breeze. There was no anger in me anymore, no tightness, no urge to defend. Only clarity. Let them speak. Let them spin. Let them twist the narrative if they needed to. I was done providing context for people who never cared for the truth. I pulled my notepad closer and made a list of next steps. The fund was growing. More applications were coming in. I had real work to do. The light in my study had turned amber by late afternoon, stretching long shadows across the bookshelves and desk. 2 framed photos sat side by side, one of Ethan in uniform, smiling, crisp and sure. The other, newly added, was a candid of a young nurse standing outside a community clinic holding a grant check from the Vance Legacy Fund. Her smile was quiet but unshakable. I sat down to write the final letter of the week. My hand didn't tremble this time. To my granddaughter, "You don't know me yet, and you never met your grandfather. But he would have loved you. He believed in starting over, in giving people the room to grow into who they were meant to be, not who others expected them to become. This is not a bribe. It's not an apology. It's a key. You decide what door it opens." I signed it simply, Merelda. I slipped the letter into the envelope along with a photo Ethan once carried in his wallet. Jaden as a toddler, asleep on his chest. I sealed it, wrote her name across the front, and placed a small sticker in the corner, just to make it easier to find among the others. Outside, the evening was still. No wind, no sound, but the faint rhythm of the neighbor's sprinkler. I stepped onto the porch, envelope in hand, and stood for a moment. Not to remember, not to second guess, just to breathe. I walked down to the mailbox and slipped it in. Then I turned, climbed the steps, and went back inside. I didn't look back. On the kitchen counter sat the next set of applications, families in need, single parents with grit, students clawing their way into better futures. Ethan's handwriting still marked the back of one form, an old note he must have used as scrap paper. I ran my finger across it, poured the last of the coffee, and opened the folder. The sun dipped low behind the trees as I got to work.